That's one way to look at it. Well, a British nurse has been actually found guilty. This is just for a horrific crime, the murders of 7 babies at a Northwest England hospital.
Yeah, so disturbing. A Manchester court convicted 33-year-old Lucy Labette Friday for killing 5 boys and 2 girls while working at the hospital's neonatal unit. She was also convicted of attempting to kill 6 other infants at the facility between 2015 and 2016. Prosecutors say she injected air into the infants' blood and stomachs, and then she overfed them with milk and then poisoned them with insulin and physically assaulted those infants.
I cannot begin to imagine how the families in this case feel today. I just hope that today's verdicts bring all of them some peace of mind for the future, and that we have answered some of the questions that they were looking for.
Well, police officers say that they found a handwritten note at Labette's home during a search, which said in part, "I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. I am evil. I did this."
Moving to world news, a British judge has sentenced Lucy Letby to spend the rest of her life in prison for murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 6 others while working as a neonatal nurse at a hospital in northern England. The 33-year-old Britain's most prolific serial child killer in modern times murdered the 5 baby boys and 2 baby girls at the neonatal unit of Countess of Chester Hospital, that's in northern England, over 13 months from 2015, injecting the infants with insulin or air or force feeding them milk. Letby refused to leave the cells to hear her sentence being handed down, leading to demands that criminals must be forced to hear the impact on their actions on the victims and their families.
There was a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions. During the course of this trial, you have coldly denied any responsibility for your wrongdoing and sought to attribute some fault to others. You have no remorse. The order of the court, therefore, is a whole life order on each and every offence, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
Now, life sentences are very rare, and only 3 women in Britain have received such a sentence before.
We want to warn you now, this next story is disturbing. A British nurse has been found guilty of killing 7 newborn children and attempting to murder 6 more. Those deaths took place between 2015 and 2016. Neonatal nurse Lucy Letby was accused of killing the babies by overfeeding them with milk and injecting them with air and insulin. UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay is now launching an independent inquiry into the case. Joining us now from London with more is CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayeb. Imtiaz, this sounds like the backstory of misery, truly horrific. We should say that the nurse denied the allegations. How did prosecutors connect her to the deaths?
Lana, good to talk to you. Yeah, this is obviously a very disturbing story. As we've been saying, Ms. Letby has been convicted of 7 counts of killing newborns and the attempted killing of 6. There are 22 charges in total. She was convicted of 16 by this jury, which deliberated for 22 days. Now, to answer your question of how the prosecution really came at this case and tried to really kind of present this really dark and disturbing allegations against this neonatal nurse. Well, essentially, at one point from 2015 to 2017, there was a series of deaths in this neonatal unit, and that, of course, caused an awful lot of alarm from those inside that hospital. Now, Ms. Letby was described as somebody who was present at all of these deaths and at all of these periods in which these children were suffering so terribly. But there's one other crucial bit of information here. Yes, there was a lot of attention on her and focus on her. We have to remember she was first taken into custody back in 2015, but was still able to work in that hospital until 2017. But when investigators entered her home, they found a piece of paper where she had written, "I have done this."
Oh my gosh. Imtiaz, what type of sentence is she now facing?
So the way it works here in the UK is that her sentencing hearing will be on Monday, and that's when we will find out just what she will be sentenced for. But again, here in England, under English law, she will likely face life in prison, and that's really going to be the extent of it, despite the horrific nature of her crime. We have to remember that not only is she responsible for the deaths of 7 infants, she's also considered the most prolific child killer in Great Britain. So this, of course, again, a very disturbing case. And although the families of those very small infants who were killed by her will be reading out victim impact statements in court on Monday, it is likely that Ms. Ledby will not be present. Here in the UK, there are measures in place in which those who are convicted of crimes are allowed to not attend hearings where victim impact statements are read out. That, of course, is hugely controversial here in the UK. Of course, this case involving a woman considered the most prolific serial killer of children in British history.
MTS, thank you.
Turning now to some international news, the UK's most prolific serial child killer in modern times has been sentenced. Nurse Lucy Letby will spend the rest of her life in jail with no chance of release. She was found guilty of murdering 7 newborn babies and trying to kill another 6 in 2015 and 2016. The CBC's Dominic Velitis is tracking this story now for us from London. Dominic, tell us more about what we learned today.
Well, Arthie, before the judge passed sentence today, we heard from the families of the babies Lucy Letby murdered and attacked and the impact that she has had on their lives. And they were harrowing accounts. One mother said the murder of her son was like something out of a horror story. Another, whose baby boy was killed by Letby, described how her world was shattered when we encountered evil disguised as a caring nurse. A third parent said, I don't think we will ever get over the fact that our daughter was tortured until she had no fight left in her. We also heard, Arthie, from parents whose children survived being attacked by Letby but were left severely disabled as a result. One saying her daughter will never have a sleepover, go to high school, have a boyfriend, or get married as a result. The judge sentenced Letby, Arthie, to a so-called whole life term, meaning she will die in jail. Here's a little more of what he had to say when passing that sentence.
This was a cruel, calculated and cynical campaign of child murder involving the smallest and most vulnerable of children. There was a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions.
Lucy Letby now starting that whole life term behind bars, Arthie. It is a very rare sentence over here. Only 3 other women in Britain have been handed one before, all, like Letby, are serial killers.
Now, Dominic, Letby also refused to show up in court today. So what's the reaction to that been like?
Yeah, that's right. Her refusal today to appear in the dock has led to demands that criminals must be forced to hear the impact of their actions on their victims and their families. And in light of this case, Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said today his government intends to take action. Here's what he had to say.
Now, I think it's cowardly that people who commit such horrendous crimes do not face their victims and hear firsthand the impact that their crimes have had on them and their families and loved ones. Now, we are looking and have been at changing the law to make sure that that happens, and that's something that we'll bring forward in due course.
So a change in the law now in the pipeline, Arthie. The government has also ordered an independent inquiry into the circumstances behind Letby's murders. One area it will look at is how hospital bosses where she worked allegedly ignored doctors' warnings about her. In addition, police say they will be reviewing the care babies admitted to hospital where Letby worked as a nurse. So cases under her care and highlighted as medically concerning will now be investigated further. Arthie.
Thanks for this, Dominic. That is the CBC's Dominic Velitis in London.
It was behind these walls in the neonatal unit of an English hospital that a killer chose her victims, cloaked in the trust that can come with a nurse's uniform. Lucy Letby, now convicted for the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 5 others between 2015 and 2016, described by prosecutors from the start as a constant malevolent presence.
She perverted her learning and weaponized her craft to inflict harm, grief, and death.
This is nursery 2. Jurors heard that Letby injected some babies with insulin, some with air, and others were force-fed milk. For grieving parents, it has been an unending ordeal. Here, the mother of twins tells a BBC programme how she found one of them crying out in pain before his death.
He had blood round his mouth, and Lucy was there, but faffing about, not doing anything.
Oh, Lucy, is it?
Yes.
Hello, my name.
Letby wasn't arrested until 2018. That's despite her being identified as the only nurse consistently on duty during all the unexplained incidents. Pediatric consultants who raised repeated alarm bells about the nurse say hospital managers ignored them.
We were urging them to investigate our concerns appropriately, and most of us felt the most appropriate way to do that would be to go to the police.
That didn't happen until 2017. When they did search Letby's house, they found baby's medical records and notebooks suggesting a troubled mind. One reading, "I'm evil, I did this." Jurors were unable to agree verdicts on the deaths of 5 other babies. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.